welcome back to Two Dudes, One Barbell. Welcome to episode 9. And today we are discussing the strength cake, as it's called by John.
Yeah.
And basically just rep ranges and how to get the most out of specific exercises and protocols. So if you're in the gym and you're doing a certain type of training, what sort of type of training you should be doing and what rep range typically works best for it? Is that what we're talking about?
I think, well, we're talking to Tanisha, who works at the same gym we do, and she was suggesting that maybe we should discuss certain rep ranges that people sort of struggle with maybe particular movements and that sort of thing.
Okay.
But I think we should start with the strength cake because maybe some people don't know about the strength cake.
Yeah, so the strength cake, as John calls it, also known as the strength pyramid. Or the
I think people call it a pyramid, or the reason I call it a cake is it's got layers, and that's the
Cakes
taste.
have layers.
Yeah,
so the onions. Yeah.
That's a Shrek reference.
Yeah. So at the bottom of the cake, we've got muscular endurance. Yep. And so
should we just run through the cake?
Run through the whole cake. So muscular endurance is at the bottom.
Yep.
And then you've got hypertrophy, which is one up from there. Then you've got your strength training, which is one up from there, max strength. And then you've got power at the top of the cake.
Yeah, the most important.
The most important.
Maybe not.
Most important depends on the context, right?
100%.
Yeah. So muscular endurance, and so this is
muscular
typically
endurance is probably the most important. To be fair.
This is typically where people get confused with rep ranges, and it was the old. Everyone had the idea of like if you do more than 20 reps, it's muscular endurance. If you do between 10 and 15, it's like hypertrophy and building muscle.
Yeah.
If you do like 1 to 5 to 10 or something like that, it's like strength, and that's like 1 to 5 is like power.
Is that what you learned?
Can you not necessarily what I learned. It's like this is what I've seen on the internet, and as I've been growing up, this is what you hear in like gym videos and stuff like that. And so I know a lot of it's been fairly well debunked when it comes to certain things, and there's a lot more crossover and a lot more nuance than what it actually is. Brad Schoenfeld is big on that. Yeah.
I actually had a look at like a lot of his papers before we went to do this particular podcast.
Yeah.
And it was hard for me to decide if I wanted to use one of his meta-analysis today, but obviously we went with something else. But he's got some great literature on different aspects of hypertrophy particularly.
Yeah.
Which is really, really cool. You can probably call him the godfather of hypertrophy.
Yeah, well, he's written a textbook on hypertrophy.
Yeah,
so I have it.
You have it?
I have it. I've only read like first maybe quarter of it, but super interesting. Just like everything, how the muscle works and how it actually grows and how hypertrophy actually works. It's like a like a textbook. It's not not casual reading or fun reading for most people.
No.
But super interesting. Yeah.
Anyway, the rep ranges that Adam was talking about that's pretty much what most people would learn in their Cert 4 in fitness in Australia, and I guess, I mean other qualifications like what's the American one, ACE?
I have no idea.
Yeah, there's American College of Exercise, I think.
Okay.
I don't know. There's other ones. I could be completely butchering that, but like there are certain rep ranges that they suggest are the ways that you train muscular endurance, hypertrophy, and maximal strength, and then power gets thrown in there somewhere, like along the line. It's like, okay,
things,
go jump a few times.
So let's maybe break down each part of the cake a bit more, and what we're saying power and strength, and what would in specifics. So muscular endurance is like how long a muscle can
work sub-maximally under load. Right? So muscular endurance is going to contribute to anything where you have to produce force on repetition. So
for a long period of time.
Like any endurance sport requires muscular endurance.
Yeah.
It's just about how much, you know, and where. So if we compare cyclist to a runner, right? Both endurance sports.
Yep.
The load that they need to be able to produce at a submaximal weight is actually quite different, isn't it? Because
cycling is different to running.
Exactly.
It's like muscular needs,
Yeah, okay. And you look at the legs of a cyclist, like even a Tour de France cyclist who's been cycling, they cycle like almost 200 Ks a day, right, during on tour.
Yeah.
Something crazy. It may be even more than that. We don't know. We're not cycling experts. or a runner, you look at their legs difference, it's very, very different.
Yeah.
But they both require muscular endurance.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So development wise. And so like you could take like a rower, which is just like the upper body version of a runner, like a long distance. Like it's muscular endurance but for a different part of the body.
I think rowing is more full body than people think.
Yeah. A lot of leg drive.
A lot of leg drive. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
But yeah, exactly. Like it's more distributed throughout the whole body.
So there's specificity within muscular endurance, like with everything.
Yeah.
But in general, it's like your muscle's ability to take you for a long period of time.
And that comes into fiber types. That also comes into the energy systems that you're going to be using. Mm-hmm. What's the predominant fuel source that someone's going to use at a particular intensity? So you're trying, as someone who's developing muscular endurance, you're trying to push your systems to use as much fat as possible. So obviously there's a metabolic side to this where you're trying to produce energy as well as
carry out a task. So trying to stay under your like aerobic threshold.
Most definitely.
And be able to maintain that for a long time.
Yeah. Exactly. So there's obviously metabolic demands, like I just said, which are going to tie into that, and I think that's the problem with putting them in boxes, is because there's so much crossover, like you said before, between the two. Like muscular endurance at some stage is going to have possibly a positive or a negative effect on other ranges within the strength cake.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
You're funny about it.
Strength cake. Well, all right. So then that's muscular endurance.
Yep.
So low loads for a long time. The next step up is hypertrophy, which hypertrophy is muscle building. For the most part. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the goal is for you to increase muscle size.
Yeah.
Right. Endurance, we didn't really. Muscle size might increase, but it's not the goal. The goal in hypertrophy is to increase size.
For a long time.
And this might be to improve capacity at maximal weights, right? So hypertrophy can lead towards increasing the amount of force we can produce.
Yeah,
maximal strength
the thicker the muscle belly, the bigger the cross-sectional size, the stronger you can become.
Yeah, exactly, in terms of capacity. Or it could just be because you want to get jacked.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Right? Or like obviously aesthetics, right? That doesn't necessarily mean you need to look like a gorilla, but like you want to increase the
muscle
belly size.
Yeah. And that has a crossover to other areas, but it can be its own thing for like bodybuilding. Like I basically live in hypertrophy.
Yeah.
I have no I can make use of muscular endurance, but it's not a priority, and rarely do I ever try to push into power or anything like that unless I just feel like trying to lift as much as I can.
Yeah. As a bodybuilder, you're probably, and this might be most people who listen, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But endurance to maximal strength training is where you will live.
Yeah.
There's probably no need to do any power training if you just want to get
jacked or fit or look good.
Definitely. And there might even be arguments for not even doing maximal strength training, as we'll discuss later.
Yeah. So hypertrophy, that's the sort of the next step up. It's the in-between range sort of thing. We're focusing on building muscle size. And then one step up on the cake from that is strength training.
Yep.
It's maximal strength. So
that's just producing as much force with the tissue that you have as possible.
So powerlifting.
Yeah, it is powerlifting, but obviously powerlifting is not power. Which is kind of sad. But
strength lifting.
It should be just called strength lifting, but that doesn't sound as good.
No.
Exactly. Isn't it funny that weightlifting is like weightlifting and then powerlifting is strength lifting, and
it's like actually the opposite. They didn't they didn't get the getting on time to book the name. Yeah, like weightlifting came out later and they're like, damn it, powerlifting's already taken.
I mean, actually, which one came first? We would probably need a historian to come out.
I wouldn't even have a clue. I'd say probably weightlifting in a sense. Like
weightlifting would have been before powerlifting, but we don't know.
Yeah, because powerlifting is specifically squat, bench, and deadlift. Like, think about cleaning a weight up might have been the first thing. Like, I remember you see those old videos or pictures of the strong men throwing a dumbbell over their head.
Yeah.
And they're probably doing like a single hand snatch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they do like the bent press and all those old weird movements.
Very strange things.
Like that people don't really do anymore. Yeah, super interesting. Well, the bench press didn't really come out until like it's the last
And it
100
wouldn't
years.
until there was equipment for it.
Yeah, I mean, you like who thought of lying down on a bench and just like pushing things off your chest? Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know.
it's cool. It's super cool, but it's not like.
Like, where did that come from? Like, practically.
Yeah.
Yeah, the strongman's probably the most practical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Strength sport, I guess. Picking up boulders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
all right.
power.
So power is the icing on the cake. It's the top bit. It's power is force times acceleration.
Yep.
So basically, how much force you can exert, powerlifting, and then how fast you can do it combined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you're trying. That's exercises like snatch.
Yeah, snatch, clean,
jerk, yeah.
push, press. They're on the continuum of showing power.
Yep.
Developing power is another thing altogether.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
So how do you develop power?
Yeah. So you have to either develop strength or speed.
And then okay.
And you put them together.
All right.
Right. Like training in the middle has a very specific application to particular movements, but most of the time, people, if we looked at their power curve, like if we used a power plate and saw where they produced their force from, we could see if they were lacking force or lacking acceleration.
Okay.
And then you just work on one of those two things.
Yep.
Which is kind of interesting, but if you train them both at the same time, there's obviously an application for that. And it's super fun.
And would you say that power is the most applicable to sports?
It depends on the sport.
Depends on the sport, yeah. Okay. Yeah. But in I guess.
I mean, let's
say
let's talk about one that requires like no power, like endurance water skiing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like,
okay.
You just hold, right?
So,
that's endurance.
Yeah.
But then on the other end of the spectrum, what would be like
let's take
power?
Like one of the most popular ones, say football. Like
which one?
Rugby, like league.
Rugby league. Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah, because we get there's a lot of young guys obviously play it, get into it, and then when it comes to the training, they have no idea of sports specific training unless they get like a super advanced coach or like a proper like knows his stuff coach.
Yeah, so for exercise performance, that's like a whole new kettle of fish.
Okay.
But if we were, we'd actually work through the strength cake anyway.
Yeah, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So muscular endurance is a good way, or should be a pretty good way for us to prevent injury in certain places, right? So the first step would be work out what sort of injuries someone's likely to have. Because if you're injured, you don't get to play.
Yeah. So
your strength training should be tailored around that initially, and then you can start building the other stuff on top of that in order to improve your performance. So what would power look like in that particular instance for a league player? Well, I would be combining strength training or maximal strength training with speed training, land training, sprinting.
Yeah.
Because your application of speed is actually
sprinting.
Sprinting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Acceleration, deceleration. So you would have to learn how to slow down quickly too. Which is something that people don't practice, but yeah, it should be done.
Well, that can be massive injury prevention too, isn't it?
Exactly.
Like you decelerate quickly, that's a lot of force going through your knees and stuff like that people don't take into account.
Most definitely. Anyway, so those two spectrums, both speed and strength, are going to contribute to power.
Yeah.
And there might be some application for doing power cleans or cleans in general for someone who's having impact, right? And if you think about a tackle in rugby league, a lot of it's really upright. And the force, you have to absorb force across your shoulders, which is very similar to what a clean would be.
Clean is, yeah, okay. Interesting. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have seen that before, cleans in like football players programs as well.
Yeah, I mean force production and also absorbing impact, which is that's the beauty of a clean, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Cool. So those are the different layers of the strength cake: muscular endurance, hypertrophy, strength training, and power. So how do you train specifically for those? So what would you say someone who wants to build muscular endurance in the gym?
We can give some rough guidelines. You know how you quickly talked about, these were the brackets.
Yeah.
I think we could give some bracket guidelines anyway, and then we can deviate from them.
Yeah.
In terms of their broadness of application. Because the truth is, you might train one and you'll get a response through the whole
A couple of them. Yeah.
Right?
Like what Brad Schoenfeld says is like you can see hypertrophy, so building muscular size, from rep ranges of like 1 to 30 plus. Like if you're lifting weights, you're probably going to hypertrophy a little bit.
Yeah, and hypertrophy is a weird one because there's no particular like performance outcome apart from
bigger muscles.
Yeah, I mean, is that a performance outcome?
No.
You know, like, so I think endurance and maximal force would probably be the spectrum, and hypertrophy probably sits, like if you want the most hypertrophy, probably sits somewhere in between those two things. If you want to maximize your time of muscle growth.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll chuck in what I used to tell my students was, we called it the hemp chart.
The hemp chart.
Yeah.
Okay.
The hemp chart.
Yeah.
Because H stands for hypertrophy, E stands for endurance, M stands for maximal force, P stands for power. Hemp. I didn't come up with it. One of my students did. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Harley. If you're listening, Harley, that's all you.
That's on you.
That's all you. Anyway, so each of those particular strength aspects, or whatever you want to call them, have sort of desired rep ranges and desired associated intensities.
Mm-hmm.
So if we go with endurance, usually we're looking at 15 plus reps.
Yep.
Usually.
Yep.
And the intensity is likely to be between 40 and 60% of their 1RM.
Yeah.
At that particular movement.
Yeah.
And then as we move up, those percentage brackets move up. So usually hypertrophy, though it does happen all the way up to 30 reps, is most of it, or if we can get the highest stimulus, is between 15.
Optimized or sort of like
I mean, we're gonna completely destroy this one, but like from a starting point, 15 to 5 is probably a good rep range to start with for growing muscle, and that would be between 60 and 80% of your 1RM.
And just by the way, guys, percentage of 1RM, 1 rep max. So if you were to do, say, a bicep curl and you get one, the heaviest you can, strict curl of like 20 kilos, then 80% your 1 rep max would be 16 kilos.
Yeah.
For 5 to 10 reps or whatever.
Yeah, it's probably,
so that's how
like 5
the percentage in 1 rep maxes works.
Yeah, so 1RM, I'm sorry, I forgot.
I just realized we haven't talked about this yet. Like the jargon.
The jargon, yeah. That was really good that you picked up on that.
Yeah. Anyway,
and then if we go to the last bracket, which is maximal
power
or maximal strength.
Maximal strength, yep.
It's 80% plus is where you're going to earn most of your gains
strength
for that.
Adaptation, yep.
And those rep ranges are likely going to be 5 or less.
Yeah.
Really, it's going to be, I mean, we're going to push that up to 6. You know, the reps go up.
Yeah.
But those are the
roughly,
are the rough brackets. And then you might be thinking, oh, well, where does power sit in that? Well, that's the thing. It doesn't sit in.
Power is like a combination in different exercises. Like it's a specific.
Yeah. I do have some recommendations on that, but we bring that back to intensity.
Mm-hmm.
And the literature sort of suggests that it's anywhere between 30 and 70% of your 1RM.
But faster?
But faster.
But faster, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, fair.
And the rep ranges are usually around the same as what maximal strength would be.
Yeah.
So usually below 5 reps.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But faster.
Yeah.
And less weight.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that...
Yeah.
Does that
makes sense.
And that's like a good way to start. You've got those percentages to give you as a guide, and then you just can completely deviate from them once you understand it further.
And seeing what you respond well to and that sort of thing.
Exactly. Because some people, I mean, if we give you a 70% load, one person, and give another person 70% load, doesn't mean they're both going to move it fast.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So it's from 30 to 70% in power, but it also requires...
It depends on the person.
Yeah, it depends on the person and their
that can be they're really like, and like some people, like obviously 5 different fiber types, fast and slow twitch.
Yeah.
So some people are gonna be able to produce force easier than other people just naturally, and like the people that are more slow twitch, more geared to like different kinds of training.
And if we just like tap into that a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
your fiber types will change depending on how you train. So if you are an athlete and you are doing slow hypertrophy, stop. Because you don't want to be slow in most sports.
No. Okay.
Yeah. Your fiber types, you just become like
just slow and big.
Slow and probably probably big.
And so that's like bodybuilders that maximize slow twitch muscle fibers.
They had a big problem with that with rugby union players in the early 2000s where they just like ignored
speed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they got quite big and then they like got slow
and they
performance like lats and
really?
I can think of one in particular, Carlos Spencer. Sorry, Carlos. He got pretty jacked and his speed like
decreased.
Yeah.
It was a performance decrease, and so not always as bigger is better.
Yeah, I mean, if you can utilize that with speed, which you can see some of these units, like obviously maintaining their fast
big
twitch.
And just fast, Yeah,
and the great thing about fast twitch fibers is they do grow.
Yeah.
So if you do want to be bigger, it's not like you don't have to stay small. Like
there's still some level of growth, but the slow twitch fibers grow much larger, have a bigger capacity for growth, don't they?
I don't think so. I actually think fast twitch fibers have a greater capacity for growth, but in terms of their application, like you said, when you grow a bigger muscle fiber, it doesn't mean it's stronger. It doesn't mean it's faster. It just has
more of it.
Yeah.
It has more cross-sectional size.
Yeah. So you have to utilize that tissue, otherwise it's just gonna like.
And that's like that study we talked about a few weeks ago. We're just increasing protein intake, increase their muscle size, but not their strength size.
Yeah.
They actually tested that, and that
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is cool. You probably have greater capacity to develop these
like potential strength.
These things, but
you've got to train for it.
You've got to go train.
So you can have them all. That's how like Ashton from the interview a couple of weeks back, 20 kilos lighter than me, much less muscle mass, but far better deadlift than me. He utilizes the muscle mass he has so much better.
Yeah, he's got good leverage as well, right? Yeah.
So he's been training for it specifically, so lots of specificity.
Yeah, I mean, and how many times have you deadlifted in the last?
Well,
I forced you to deadlift, didn't I?
Still not much. Still like only a handful of times. But that's like an example of utilizing the muscle mass you actually have, and he doesn't have to get necessarily bigger to get stronger.
No, definitely not. And that's obviously another thing that we should address, like people being scared of growing muscle tissue. It's quite hard to grow muscle tissue. You young boys and young girls who are scared of getting bigger.
It's the young girls especially.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's hard work.
And so like in a year, how much muscle mass do you reckon you can grow? So I've got my idea. I always tell people somewhere between like 1.5 to 2 kilos for me, if I'm training like 6 days a week and eating maximal, like optimal.
Yeah, but naturally, if you've just seen it,
you've just seen Adam.
You've seen Adam how big he is already. Like once you get to a certain standard, it becomes very, very slow.
Yeah, and so diminishing returns.
Yeah.
So your initial first year, and this is what I tell people, like when they, like young dudes especially, if they jump into the gym for the first time, have no idea what they're doing. Even if they half-ass it, they'll see better gains in a year than I will.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, most definitely. They can train sub-maximally and eat rubbish
and get huge.
Grow. Yeah,
because they're just pumped full of testosterone and they just.
And also it's their first year, right? So they've got like a lot to fill out in their frame.
And so everything is stimulus as well.
Yeah.
Like everything is new to them. Whereas like I've been bench pressing for like 10 years, so like my buddy's like, oh, here we go again.
We've done this
before. We know how to do this. This is this is nothing. Whereas they jump on a bench press and your body's like, holy crap, what is this? We need to get stronger quick.
Yeah, that's crazy. The capacity for growth is like diminishes very, very, very quickly.
Rapidly.
Yeah. I think 1 kilo seems reasonable for a trained individual
per year.
Who's natural.
Yeah.
Yeah, who's like
natural being the key.
Yeah, being the key, right? And we're talking about lean tissue.
Yeah.
I mean, you could gain a lot of weight.
Oh, okay. And I have in the past.
Yeah.
But even like gaining a lot of weight, you don't gain a lot of like lean tissue. So my strategy when it comes to like bulking has changed substantially in the last like 2 years alone.
Yeah.
Because between bodybuilding shows, my first and my second one, I put on 20 kilos.
Yeah.
In like 3 months, and then I had to lose like 16 or more just to get back to the same level of leanness to get on stage, and that took 6 months of like rubbish dieting and feeling like hell. So now it's like it's not
horrible.
worth.
Definitely not worth it.
No,
Don't go down
definitely
that
not
track.
worth it.
Yeah.
I've done it. It's
Yeah.
not worth it.
Cool.
Slight surplus. Stay within like reasonable body fat percentage.
Yeah,
and
either a perma bulk or do it smart like Adam.
Yeah. Now. Yeah. You don't need to put on. You don't need to get fat. Is the big thing to build muscle. But how much do you reckon, like, say females that are worried about building muscle mass, they're worried about that bulky look? I don't know where they get it from. Who are these females they're looking at necessarily that are jacked out of their minds?
They're probably looking at CrossFitters, right?
CrossFitters on Instagram and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. I mean, yeah, we could delve into what we suspect certain people are dabbling in, but we don't need to.
Yeah.
Let's just say that it's hard for women to grow that much muscle tissue.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if they did it naturally, they worked really hard to get it, like really, 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 really hard.
Yeah. And I think a lot of women don't realize just how many other women are taking anabolic steroids.
Yeah, it's crazy, and obviously it's swept under the rug heaps.
Yeah.
Especially in those. Yeah, we won't talk about the CrossFit games.
We've got an opinion, but let's not talk about it.
Yeah, let's not talk. Well, we could talk about it, but like obviously we don't. I'm only speculating.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, you
know
can only
anyone.
ever speculate. No one is outwardly.
I don't know
open about
any
it.
of the athletes.
It's like the majority of like bodybuilders. Like if they're taking steroids, they're not going to tell you. They're just going to compete in the federation that isn't tested, or even in sometimes the tested one. Yeah, but they're not going to outwardly say it.
Yeah,
because there's a stigma around it, of course.
Anyway, should we go back to rep ranges?
Yeah, let's go back to rep ranges.
That was a nice little segue.
All right.
Important to address, to be fair.
So we have a study that Jones found that basically highlights what we've been talking about, the difference between the rep ranges.
Yep, and the
effects and the intensities, and what that actually has on muscle protein synthesis. So muscle protein synthesis is what happens when you do a workout or eat some protein, and then it triggers muscle growth.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. So that's what the study was looking at, the production, like the triggering of MPS and how much it produces for how long. The study was using, was it trained individuals?
Yeah, they were all trained individuals, I'm pretty sure, and there was 15 of them. And like you said, there was a low intensity, high volume group, and there was a high intensity,
low volume.
Low volume. Now, when they say intensity, they're talking about the weight. They're not talking about your RPE scale, right? Because they were going to failure.
So they were picking intensity based on load, and then they were going to failure in both groups.
Groups,
One group was it was a static leg extension. Yep. One group was 90% of 1 rep max till failure,
and the other was 30.
And the other one was 30% 1 rep max till failure, which would have got them far more repetitions to get to failure.
Most definitely.
Like a lot.
Crazy.
And so that group did way more reps, and as a result, what they found was that that group triggered far more
MPS in the muscle. They took a biopsy and then they checked.
Yeah.
So what does that tell us about rep ranges? Well, that actually tells you favoring higher rep schemes is probably going to be likely lead to more hypertrophy. That's your takeaway here. So when you're doing high volume or low weights and you think that it's toning,
you're actually probably building more muscle.
You're building more muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was assuming you get close to failure. But
the failure aspect is huge.
It's probably key.
Yeah, because I think a lot of, like, referring back to probably the ladies when they think they're toning.
Yeah.
They're probably not pushing to near failure.
Yeah, exactly.
And
so
worried,
probably, you're probably only getting a slight amount of hypertrophy, so they probably are getting their toning effect.
Toning effect. It's more like just cardio under load at that point sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas...
It's like cycling with your arms.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen a guy once at the gym he was doing dumbbell rows, but it was like he was training to start a lawnmower. Like he was going up and down as fast as he could, like he was trying to punch the ground and pull it back. He had a super light weight, and he was just doing like 50 of them, just as fast as he could.
That's like the Nadal, right? Have you seen Rafael Nadal do the chainsaw?
No.
The chainsaw when he wins, and he's like, yeah.
No?
But that's what I remember.
That's what he was. He was training to do the Nadal. It's hilarious.
We should get a clip of that.
So that's the study we were looking at, and it was pretty substantial. Like, it was significant differences.
Yeah, it was huge. What they measured obviously was from a biopsy, and we could argue or discuss the validity of a mechanistic study, but the fact that MPS was higher based off their measurements is pretty profound, and it probably matches the anecdotal evidence from a lot of traditional bodybuilders who just do high volume stuff.
Yeah, and that's I'm one of them. Like, I know I see way better growth out of my legs when I'm doing like 20 sets on 20 reps on leg press rather than doing like heavy 5x5 squats.
Yeah, and this is actually where we can go into the nuance of different exercises, particularly for endurance and hypertrophy, because I probably would lump them together.
Yeah,
I know that's weird, but like if
you probably would too. Yeah.
Yeah, like hypertrophy and endurance, let's say you wanted endurance without hypertrophy, you're gonna have to go way higher in the number of reps.
Ranges, yeah.
But most people that I talk to want both.
Yeah.
Right. You want to increase work capacity, you're going to have a cardiovascular effect, which is wonderful.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And then muscle's going to grow. So for body composition changes, those are the two sort of parts of the strength cake that we probably want to work in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So lower body, high reps seems to work really well. You like leg press for that.
Leg press, yeah.
You push usually above 10 reps. Have you ever gone above 20 in the leg press?
Yeah. I think I went up to like 30 plus at one point, but then I had an exertion headache and it put me on my ass for a while.
I've done a 30 rep set on the leg press. It just turns into cardio, it feels like.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. There's a huge fluid retention in the quads, but
the burn and the metabolite buildup I think is massive for it.
Yeah, and the interesting thing of these lighter loads, right, if you're pushing towards the 20 to 30 rep range, your recovery, even though the set feels like absolute death, your recovery from them are going to be pretty good because the loads are probably going to be a little bit less.
Less strenuous on the joints and stuff like that.
Less strenuous on the joints, on the central nervous system.
Yeah.
It's more metabolic.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't talked about, have we talked about triggers of hypertrophy?
Triggers hypertrophy?
Well, where does hypertrophy come from?
Oh, the different things that cause it. I think we may have briefly.
We might have touched on it. We'll just remind everyone. Metabolic stress is one of those, and the other one is mechanical tension.
Yeah.
Right. So the longer the tension on the actual muscle, there's mechano sensors, right? That sense tension on the muscle. They stimulate MPS. Right.
And so that's just your muscles being exposed to a heavy load, essentially.
Yeah, load, and that's the overload principle, right?
Yeah.
You're exposing them to a load they're not used to. And the other is the buildup of the actual metabolites, metabolic stress.
The pump,
the burn, or combination of the two, the swelling, right?
Yeah.
These things
trigger
muscle growth too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I guess the original traditional idea around doing 8 to 12 reps was like trying to match those two right in the middle.
Yeah, and get the best.
But the thing is, if you do more reps, you still have more mechanical tension. It's just on repeat.
I find that the biggest issue with my argument for this is like psychologically pushing to higher rep ranges is far more difficult.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So the application of rep ranges also depends on the person's experience.
And also like their attitude towards it. I think.
Yeah.
Some people will get to 10 to 15. They'll be like, that's enough. And like, even if it's not that hard, it's like at 15 reps, they've been going for 30 seconds or something like that. And they just like psychologically trying to push to like 30 reps on a leg press or something like that. It's a long time working. It's going to burn a lot more. It's going to hurt a lot more. And a lot of people struggle with that. They'd rather just do a set of 10 and be done with it.
Yeah. And then and if that's the case, right, and you know who you are, and I'm not pointing fingers, but like if you know that you're not gonna really give it close to failure, on like 25 reps, you're probably better off hitting those 10 to 15 rep ranges.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I do that with a lot of my clients. I rarely put 20 rep sets into people's programs because I know that they probably like, we're masochistic. We'll do it like to try and get to that absolute failure.
Yeah,
Like
you wanna
you can make us
get
do
it
push-ups, and we'll do push-ups until we're crying. If the goal is muscle building or the goal is to
Yeah.
get stronger, like most people won't do that.
No.
And so you've got to make sure that whatever you're planning in their program is something that they're like. It's not, if they're say a new individual and fairly untrained getting into it, you don't want to make it too intense that they're scared of the weight and that they won't be able to do it. Like they're not going to do
Yes.
like 5x5 squats by themselves super heavy if they're brand new, and they're probably not going to do a set of 20 plus on the leg press. And so that's
such a good point.
That sweet spot of like 10 to 20, 10 to 15 that's where I program 90% of my clients.
And that's probably where you get the most crossover, right?
Yeah.
In terms of maximal strength, endurance,
muscle building,
and muscle building.
which is what they're looking for. If they're looking to like slim down, they're looking to build some muscle mass. They're not looking to get as strong as they can necessarily, because most people, they're not trying to win a powerlifting show or anything like that. Getting strong is fun, and I'll put it in their program sometimes for that aspect, because it's like rewarding to see themselves getting stronger each week. If they do it. But for the most part, like 10 to 15 reps. That's like as far as I'll push it volume wise, because then it becomes like very long and drawn out, and you've got to have the courage or the resilience to get through to it. That's like when COVID happened and everyone was doing home workouts, and everyone was like messaging me like, what do I do about home workouts? Like rep ranges, like how many sets of things. I'm like, you just need to do whatever you're gonna do until you can't do anymore. And that's it. Like if you're gonna do push-ups, you can't just stop at 20 if you can do 20. You can't just stop at 10 if you're gonna do like 4 sets of 10. That's gonna do nothing. You've got to do 4 sets of failure.
Well, that's often, like in strength programs, that's often prescribed. Push-ups and pull-ups are usually prescribed as many as you can do in each set.
AMRAP, as many reps as possible. And I think that's like when it comes to calisthenics and stuff like that, that's the key feature. Like I don't think there's any rep range. Like I always eat, like even if you've got like a light dumbbell at home or something like that, and that's all you have, like during COVID people have like a 10 kilo dumbbell or less, and it's like, how many reps do I do? It's like as many as you can. That's it. That's the only way you're going to see progress if you can't increase the muscular like the mechanical tension.
Exactly.
That's it. You're only working with one variable.
Yeah.
And then that's way more difficult. Like getting people to do sets of like, because say you have a 10 kilo dumbbell and you can normally do 30 kilos of a dumbbell row till 15 reps. So a 10 kilo dumbbell, you can do like 40 reps. It's
maybe even more.
You've got to find a way to either increase the difficulty, or you've got to just be ready to do 3-minute long sets.
Okay, and one way that you could do that is, let's say you don't have the option of changing weights. Tempo is your friend. Well, it's also your enemy, but like doing slow eccentrics. Eccentric is the downward phase of the lift. I just need to make sure that
the concentric is the up.
Up phase. So slowing down the eccentric portion is going to be very useful for developing strength and hypertrophy. Interestingly enough, but such a good point. Most people don't like to go to failure anyway, so it's not and the cool thing is, if your goal is not hypertrophy and your goal is maximal strength, you probably shouldn't be going to failure. Fair enough. Because you want the movement to be crisp and you want to be producing as much force as possible.
And also probably recovering.
Like and you want to recover from it.
Strength training is a lot more frequency, isn't it?
You tell me. How many days a week, how many sessions a week do you train? How many do I train?
But you were squatting every day though.
But you have 11 sessions, right? Of hypertrophy, and I have like 6.
Okay.
So strength training is less, but you don't go to failure unless part of your goal is to grow.
Add a little diversity.
So that's the other end of the spectrum, right? And then if you threw it on its head and we had like a COVID thing again, would you focus on doing as many reps as possible, or would you trying to develop strength and bodyweight movements like a single arm push-up or like a single leg squat? Do you know what I mean? I'm just going to flip it fully on its head. It's like
find ways to make it more difficult.
Rather than if I only had a 10 kilo dumbbell, I don't know if I'd use it.
No?
I would probably just try and do other body weight movements, because it's like,
More
what am I
difficult.
gonna do with a 10-kilo dumbbell?
Like 400 squat sets.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Just progress your pistol squat from a box, like, you know.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's my thought.
Yeah, well, it's just difficult. If you can get in the gym anyway. Like, let's hope we don't get another lockdown.
Yeah.
That wasn't fun. All right, cool. Do you have any final points on rep ranges that you want to?
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, we could probably talk a long time about this. We did talk about lower body just quickly, and I know we really only talked about endurance and hypertrophy, mainly hypertrophy. But were there any other muscle parts that you find benefit from a different rep range rather than high reps? Because I would argue that maybe the chest itself requires higher stimulus from what I've experienced.
Higher stimulus is in rep range?
Or higher weight.
Higher weight.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of
most things.
Most things. That's what I've found.
So you found that, like, for instance, heavy bench press for less reps builds your chest more.
Yeah, and when
still
I say
in that range,
usually we're still working towards like 6 to 10.
Yeah.
But like that range, higher reps than that is, I don't think, for like a bench press. I think it is necessary, but maybe not the bench press particularly. Do you know what I mean? Like, certain things like that. Like, why would you do 10 plus reps on a bench press? But have you a different experience to that?
No, honestly, like, my training's always been similar, but I can't tell if it's just sort of ego of wanting to lift heavy bench press that I'd always do like a power building style training program even before I learned a lot of stuff, and it was like I'd start with 5x5 bench press. Rarely would I do sets of like 10 plus ever on bench press.
Yeah.
I think that was mainly because I wanted a big bench press.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know.
There's another benefit to doing those rep ranges between 10 and 5 is when you can push more weight at the top of your strength cake, your endurance, the potential for your bottom gets higher. Okay. So this is an argument for strength spattering in the power building stuff. Having some strength so your bottom fills out
more. Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense? So like, let's give a scenario. You can squat 100 kilos, right? And then your endurance range is between 40 and 60 kilos, right? What happens when you can squat 140?
Yeah, so it brings up the whole baseline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And does that make sense?
Absolutely. And like I have done that and used that method with clients as well. And like, it's the whole doing a hypertrophy block and then a strength block and then a hypertrophy block. And so you do a little while trying to get your bench press heavier so that your hypertrophic rep range is higher at a lower, higher weight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's like a little counter argument to our high volumes. But the thing is, if you push the failure at the low weights, your strength will probably increase as well. Yeah, anyway.
It all just sort of
flows,
meshes together. Yeah.
So just a quick thing on isolation exercises, because that's one more that we didn't really touch on, and I think do actually need higher rep ranges.
Isolation work?
Yeah, just because of safety and also for the feel, right? Because like if you do a heavy lateral raise, let's say,
you get a lot of other stuff into, like, your odds are you're going to shrug it up or something like that.
Yeah. The muscles that you want to work may not be working, right? So same with the leg extension. Not all of us can do the whole stack. So picking weights which we can do higher rep ranges in and get full range of motion and that sort of thing with isolation activities. I wonder,
is there a specific reason for that? It's just like you can...
The shearing force on the joint.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, in terms of safety, but also the activation, it might be because you're just trying to specifically activate like a small certain group of muscle.
Yeah. Whereas if you make the weight, like you said with the lateral raises, make the weight too heavy and it exceeds what your shoulders are capable of doing with strict form, you're going to cheat. Yeah. Even if you if you strap yourself in, if you had like a lateral raise machine, there's only a certain point you can get up to before your shoulders just sort of can't get through it.
Yep.
Like there's nothing else that can help it in isolated movements. Yeah. So I guess you hit a max real quick.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like who does like less than 5 leg curls?
No one that I know of.
Yeah.
Ever. Yeah.
Like that, like because you just won't get it to your butt.
Yeah, you won't get the full range.
Yeah. Does that make yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
So like just work way higher on those ranges, and if you want to go lower for those particular movements, I suggest doing like a slow eccentric. That's probably the way you can get around it. If you're the type of person who can't sit there and do 20 reps, do the same weight but slow down the eccentric portion.
Yeah. Okay.
And you can probably get away with it. Like a leg extension. Let's say your knees are fine, and you can't do 20 because you just find it boring or you just hate it.
Yep.
Do 10 and then bring down the eccentric to like 3 seconds.
Slow down the tempo. Yeah. Use the tempo instead of trying to push to failure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah. Those are the only extra little
caveats.
Yeah. There's going to be way more.
There's a lot more. Like,
but I thought that would be
eccentric training and stuff like that.
I thought that would be a nice one for us to talk about. I agree with Tanisha on that one.
Yep. All right. Cool. So, hopefully that's giving you an idea of rep ranges and where you should be working, and sort of made it a bit clear that there is no necessarily set rules. There's some guidelines, but you've got to just figure out your own approach based on those guidelines.
Yeah, I think so. We gave ranges, but obviously
it's not gospel.
Yeah. Please, it's not like, oh, you're working above that.
Yeah, I did more than 6 reps, so I'm not getting stronger.
Yeah.
I've heard that before.
5x5 everything.
Yeah, I've heard people say that before. It's like I'm like not gonna do anything higher than blah 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 because I'm focusing on strength specifically. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
So take everything with a grain of salt, do your own research, and obviously apply it to yourself as you see fit based on your experience. Yeah, that's a big one. Like, you'll find out what works best for you and whether you're more prone to sort of a certain style of training. And obviously it fills into what your goal is massively. But yeah.
Cool. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening. See you next time. On behalf of 2 Dudes, 1 Barbell, we appreciate you watching. Follow us on our socials on Insta, Facebook, and YouTube at 2 Dudes, 1 Barbell. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe or follow us on Spotify. It goes a long way. We really appreciate you.
A lot.